Today on the channel, I'm going to be taking a look at a product I've really wanted to try out for quite a while now. It's these Redshift ShockStop Pro seat post and stem. Now, I've got a few big gravel adventures planned over the next few months, so I decided to ask Redshift if they wouldn't mind sending me over a stem and a seat post to give it a go and just see how the system performs. And they said yes, so I've got them here to try out. So yeah, I didn't have to pay for these. However, there's no obligation for me to say anything specific about them other than just to give them a go and make some content about them. So yeah, first things first, let's crack them open. On the table in the garage then, I've got all the parts here that they've sent me over. They've also sent me over their Garmin mount for the stem as well, as I did ask for that. Right, let's crack into the box. We'll start with the seat post. So because this is the Pro edition, it can do 20 mil of travel and it is a little bit lighter than the non-Pro edition, which has slightly more travel. So this is more race tuned, which probably for my use is the more appropriate one. Okay, so very nice, like clean cardboard packaging with the seat post inside. Now, obviously, because of all of this suspension mechanism, it is going to be quite a bit heavier than your regular seat post, and you definitely can feel that. I will get it on the scales later. I have to say though, it does feel extremely premium quality, and it's very intricate, all of this linkage design here. And I've gone for the 27.2 by 350 size. Now I think if you want a bigger seat post, what they do is they supply you with shims rather than having to like have a bunch of different sizes of these. I doubt I'm compressing that without my body weight. Also in the bag, you get a very greasy, different elastomer if you want to customize like the suspension properties of it. Yeah, there you go. The red elastomer is for 79 to 110 kilo riders. Now this Pro seat post is only rated up to 110 kilo riders. You want to take off one of the coil springs if you're under 61 kilos, but for 61 to 79, which I fall in, use the green elastomer, which is the one that is pre-installed. So yeah, let's put the seat post to one side then and take a look at the stem. Cracking this one open. In the packaging, you have a hex key, instructions, warranty card, and finally, we have the stem itself. Again, it is going to be a bit heavier than your regular kind of stem, but that is a very smart looking, like it's more of a matte finish for half of it and then it's glossy on the second half. Now I've asked for a 110 mil in a ±6 degree. They make these in a whole range of sizes, so you can get the one that fits you. And you get a bag of 3 different adjustable elastomers. And finally, we've got the Garmin mount. They make these for all the standard kind of computers, Garmin, Hammerhead, Wahoo. And yeah, it's pretty much your bog standard mounts on the front of the stem option through the stem bolts. But it does feel pretty well made. It's not dead cheap plastic and rubbishy milling like you see on some of these. It does look like you could thread your own 3-prong mount on the bottom there for an action camera like one of my Insta360s. Right, time to get it installed. We're going to start with the stem. Oh yeah, and before I forget, I'm going to throw it on the scales. So just the stem alone with the stock elastomers clocks in at 243 grams. So that's about an increase of 130 grams based on my stem I already have, with the Garmin mount being exactly 30 grams. And then the seat post, again, in just its stock configuration, is clocking in at 450 grams. So this seat post is rather heavy and will add a bit of weight to your bike. So it's a trade-off you'll just have to decide, you know, comfort versus weight. Over an ultra endurance event though, sometimes comfort is going to be more important than weight. Oh yeah, and also in the instructions it does say the stem is preset to be in the +6 position. Now I typically run my stem -6, so like down a bit. So I'm going to have to flip one of the elastomers first before installing it. So I don't know if you can see, but inside there are the 2 little elastomers. There's currently like a pink and a blue one with a Torx bolt holding them in place. So I'm going to have to grab a Torx bit to take them out. Right, yeah, let's get our bars on. This Garmin mount does feel pretty premium and it doesn't feel like it's going to be a horrible springboard like some of them do. Ooh, that is rather weird. It proper does bounce. You know what? That could be quite fun to ride. Onto the seat post. Now before anyone shouts at me in the comments, I've not clamped it on the seat post. That is completely loose, just to rest it there. Just so I get better access to the seat post. First things first, to account for the fact it will sag ever so slightly, which is like sort of the preload from your own body weight, you need to move your saddle 4 mil forward and 5 mil higher than normal. So I'm just quickly going to measure up. Now, given I'm coming from a 0 offset, I might struggle to get the offset quite right, but we'll just give it our best shot. I think for me, I'll just be slammed forward on the rails. 77, just over 77 centimeters. So I'll go for 77.5 when I put this one on. Again, like with the stem, this can be configured stiffness-wise for your weight. The stock configuration is for like a 60 to 80 kilo rider, so absolutely perfect for me. It's gonna feel a lot heavier than this was anyway. A super light seat post with a super light SLR Boost saddle, but hopefully the increased comfort will be worth it. Right, let's get it installed. That's way too high currently. That's pretty much about 5 mil higher than it was before. Let's just get it set nice and tight. Right, okay, Redshift system fully installed. I guess all that's left now is to get some kit on and give it a ride out on the trails. Right, it is now a couple of months later and I've been running the Redshift ShockStop Pro system on my gravel bike for the last couple of months. And I've got a lot of thoughts about some of the stuff it does really well and some inherent drawbacks with the system. So before we get into all the stuff it does amazingly well, I'm going to start with the slight drawbacks of the system. And the first one, the massive elephant in the room, is its weight. It is not a light system. Now, as you saw in my weigh-in earlier, I think generally it'll probably add around 300 to 400 grams to your bike weight, especially on my bike where I was running a really light stem and seat post beforehand. And that's for the lighter weight Pro version that I've been running. Now, is it enough to make a significant performance difference versus some of the gains it might give you? Who knows? But it's a trade-off I'm willing to take on at least a rolling or even fairly hilly gravel race. The second major downside of the system is you are adding a lot of complexity to your bike. Think about the number of bearings and moving parts in that seat post alone and in the stem. So that's extra bearings to maintain, potentially replace, clean, ensure they're not getting rusty and covered in like salt during the winter. So it is obviously going to be more work keeping on top of your bike maintenance. And I imagine if you let these things wear out, it won't be cheap to fix either. So you've got to be willing to put in the maintenance if you're going to run a system like this. One extra downside as well is I did have to tune and adjust the elastomers ever so slightly in the stem, as I found the stock one they came with, I found it just had far too much movement on the front for my own personal preference. So I did stiffen it up with this sort of 70 to 80 kilo option, despite weighing about 66 myself. But actually, I guess that is also a pro that you can customize the feel of both the seat post and the stem. And then the final big one is it does take a while to get used to the feeling of it and getting used to sort of how to sit on the saddle to get the best out of the system. I found even when I was first running it, during one moment during the Grand Cymru, I had a bit of a panic that I had a rear puncture.
Have I got a soft back tyre?
When actually, in reality, there wasn't a puncture. It was just a sensation of the seat post bobbing ever so slightly, making it feel like it was a bit flat at the back. Fortunately, that wasn't the case though. And right, that is pretty much the main downsides out the way. But now we've talked all the downsides, let's get on to some of the real positives I've found with the system. And now I haven't gone light on it. I've ridden it in World Series gravel races. I've used the stem even at the World Champs, which maybe I didn't finish. But I've also used it in loads of training and just my own personal gravel rides over the past couple of months. And yeah, I have been absolutely loving it. And even though, as you've seen from my hill climb builds, I am a massive weight weenie. I'm currently swapping all the bolts in my time over there to titanium. I'm going to keep it on my bike, you know. I think it's that good. And the tagline of this video, this genuinely feels like cheating. I actually genuinely stand by that. First up, this addresses one of the big concerns I had when switching to this system, that it was going to make the bike feel dead and mushy and just like a noodle with a really weak bottom bracket almost. But actually, since it is just the seat post and stem that is moving, you know, your cranks are still rigid on your nice stiff racing gravel frame, the power transfer just feels identical. The only thing is sometimes when you're sprinting out the saddle, there is a slight bit more movement in your bars. But I find when you're gravel racing, that's not really something you're doing that often. It's generally a lot of seated power output. And that leads me to my next point. I think it's amazing for the power transfer. When you're climbing on generally quite rough gravel at high speeds, I used to find with like a rigid seat post, I was bouncing up and down all over the place. And it got really tiring, especially on sort of 100 kilometre to 200 kilometre gravel races where you're in the saddle for anywhere from like 3.5 to nearly 7 hours, like at the Dirty Reaver. You know, it does take its toll on you. And just that extra bit of plantiness you feel from not bouncing on every single little bump allows you to stay far more planted in the saddle and really just keep that steady power down. And anyone who's ridden a gravel race before knows it is all about that sort of steady endurance power transfer. Compared to road racing when there's a lot of like coasting in a bunch, in a gravel race, it is far more sort of steady state effort rather than a really surgy effort. I can sort of compare this to, it's almost a bit like the first time you go to wide tyres. So say you've gone from like 35mm gravel tyres to a 45 or a 50 where you can run nice low pressures now. It almost has that same feeling, but even more so. You know, the comfort you gain from this is incredible. And again, nicely, that leads me on to the next point, and that is the comfort gains. Now, I've mostly focused on performance up until this point, and yes, comfort and performance are intrinsically linked, but the comfort gains are phenomenal. Now, when you're on like a smooth fire road or on like a canal towpath, it basically feels like you're on the road. It is crazy. Like the first time I tried this, when you're properly planted and balanced on your saddle, holding the bars nicely, it feels like nothing else. It is buttery smooth and is honestly such a nice sensation when you're used to being beaten up by a gravel bike. And then as soon as the terrain gets tougher and more rocky, it just allows you again to stay planted in the saddle and not be being pinged off in all directions. And actually the stem as well really helps with your control. When you go down into a dip, you've just got that little bit extra give, so you're not slamming into the bottom of it and really like jarring your steering. It's just that little bit more controlled once you're used to it though, because that is a weird sensation at first. The final big benefit, I think, and now I don't really have any data to back this up, but I reckon it's going to make you a bit more puncture resistant as well. As all them times when you're slamming into like a sharp rock, it's just reducing the amount of time that you're decelerating, almost a bit like a crumple zone, because the majority of the mass on the bike is your body. You know, your bike's probably 10 kilos and you're 60, 70, maybe even 80 kilos. So if you're reducing that deceleration time of your body, you're elongating the time that energy transfer is happening over, reducing that massive dump of energy, which is going to pop your tyre or your tube and give you a pinch flat.
Puncture!
So yeah, I think all in, this is an incredible system. And if you race gravel seriously, or you love your absolute endurance rides, it is one for you. But there's one final thing that I need to address, and that is the price. Now, this is a product made by a small American company that's very bespoke, very high quality. So of course it commands a huge price tag. Now the Pro stem that I have alone is £249.99 and the seat post £279.99, which is quite painful. You know, over £500 for a seat post and stem. That's a lot of money. But I have to say, the quality and the fit and finish of the product really does match up to its price. And then they do also make a cheaper, slightly heavier version, the non-Pro edition, which will set you back £189.99 for the stem and £229.99 for the seat post. And I think the seat post also has a little bit more travel. So yeah, all in, I genuinely think these are a huge performance upgrade. And if you can afford it, you know, you're buying a 10 grand gravel bike, you know, I think this is really worth it. And actually might be something you compromise on another upgrade, thinking luxury bike upgrades like ceramic bearings or, you know, carbon bars and saddle, and go for this instead. I really do think it has way more performance potential than pretty much any of those. You know, okay, it might not be as good as going to tubeless or disc brakes for the first time, but it is still really up there in terms of the performance upgrades. And I definitely take it over going for like a S-Works layup versus just a standard, you know, couple of hundred grams heavier regular person layup, which is going to cost you a lot more than £500 to upgrade. Overall, I have absolutely loved it, and I'm going to continue to run it on my gravel bike for the foreseeable, really. The only thing I'm going to have to navigate is on my new light carbon, I've got an integrated bar and stem, which obviously isn't going to work with the separate stem that you have to use for Redshift. So I'm probably going to even ditch the integrated bar and stem, to be honest with you, just for the versatility and the comfort and the performance I'm gaining from this Redshift system. So I will leave links to the products down below. They're not affiliated, but I do genuinely love this product. So if you want to check it out for yourself, feel free. And I've got loads of exciting tech content coming up over the next few months, including the build of my time right there. And I will be leaving the world of high-end premium bike components behind in favour of a load of cheap AliExpress parts too. So get yourself subscribed so you don't miss it. And I'll see you all in the next one.